We've all grown up in a world where currencies are forced upon us in a monopolistic fashion, where currencies are defined strictly by the geographies in which they occur, and where the choice of currency is not yours. It is an accident of birth. Currency, as we understand it, is an artifact of the nation-state, and it imposes upon us certain constraints. We don't choose our currency, it chooses us. And we are forced to use that currency in all of our interactions. We don't have a choice. Until 2008, that is. And now we live in a new world. A world in which currency is a choice. And not just a choice in terms of use. It's not just a matter of being able to choose which currency we use as individuals, but it's also a means of expression. And if you don't have a currency with a stamped face on it, you invent it. And you can see this. One of the things that really captivated me was understanding that if you have a primary school environment and you watch children in their natural habitat, a very unnatural habitat in most schools, but in any case, they don't have currency. Young children don't have currency and they don't understand currency, so what they do is they invent currency. They start trading rubber bands, Pokemon cards, Tamagotchi, tokens of affection, tokens of popularity. Humans create currency as a means of expressing their desires, of expressing their individuality. So I thought, what happens when a 5-year-old in a primary school can use a website to create Joey Coin, to compete against Maria Coin in a game of popularity within their school? And then it dawned on me. To ask the question, how many currencies will exist, is equivalent to ask the question, how many bloggers will there be on the internet? And the answer is simple: all of us. There used to be a time that if you wanted to read authoritative opinion, you bought a piece of paper from an organization that had a printing press that was 3 stories high and 4 football fields long and had a really great name like the New York Times. And that organization could buy ink by the barrel, and through that ownership of this enormous manufacturing facility, they had the weight of authority. And so we imbued authority into these institutions, and we used that authority to decide which opinions mattered and which opinions didn't. We used them as gatekeepers of authority to give us guidance in understanding opinion. And then the internet destroyed all of that, because suddenly anyone could print and anyone could publish. And I remember in the early days, people talked about, well, how the hell will we know which opinions matter if anyone can have an opinion? The world will come to an end, surely. And suddenly the world is upside down. Authority is no longer the person who owns the printing press, but it is now the person who has the content that matters. And we just did this to currency. Because now the authority is not derived from the sovereignty of the issuer, from the printing press of a nation state that can declare through monopoly and use of force that this is the currency you will use. Now we can choose currency, and a 5-year-old can create currency. And maybe the currency that the 5-year-old created has monetary value. Maybe it doesn't. Most likely it doesn't. Some will. And so we need to get used to a world where we have to judge currency not by who issued it, but by who uses it. This isn't about who adopts Bitcoin first or who adopts cryptocurrencies first, because the internet is adopting cryptocurrencies, and the internet is the world's largest economy. And it is the first transnational economy, and it needs a transnational currency. To summarize, what we've really done is we've inverted the very basic and most fundamental equation of currency, which is that for millennia, until the year 2008, sovereignty defined currency. Sovereignty was the basis upon which currency could be created, and that currency allowed that sovereignty to be expressed. The monopolistic control of currency is the basis of sovereignty. And now the internet has a currency, And the internet is going to use that currency to create sovereignty. After 2008, currency creates sovereignty. And the internet has its own currency, which means the internet has purchasing power, which means the internet has economic freedom, which means the internet can exert that economic freedom in a post-nationalist way, in a way that ignores borders and makes the nation state not obsolete, but simply less relevant. So this is the world we now live in, a world in which currencies can coexist and where currency and its user adoption creates sovereignty. That's basically what I wanted to talk about today. Thank you.
Hey there guys, Dan Dix here reporting for Press for Truth. We're currently at the Toronto Bitcoin Expo here with Andreas, one of the main speakers. And Andreas, thank you very much for taking some time to speak with us today at Press for Truth.
Thank you so much, I appreciate it.
Now, what was it that first got you interested in Bitcoin? What was it for you that brought Bitcoin to your attention?
Well, funnily enough, an experience I share with many others is the first time I saw Bitcoin, I discounted it as nerd money and ignored it for several months more. And then the second time I read the original paper, a white paper written by Satoshi Nakamoto, the white paper that explains the scientific basis of this. And what struck me by that was the understanding that this was not just a currency. This was a platform, an application platform, a network that allows you to do decentralized trust. And on top of that, you can build currency as an application, but currency is just the first application. And once I realized the implications of that, the possibilities just exploded in my mind, and I dedicated my work from that moment on to Bitcoin.
I've heard somewhat of the allure seems to be that it's the anonymity to Bitcoin is that you can do transactions outside of the view of the big banks or the government. Is that a big part of why it's so interesting to you or others?
Not really. I mean, Bitcoin isn't really anonymous. It's loosely pseudonymous. To me, I think the opportunity here is to decentralize finance in a way that allows us to empower the billions of people who have no access to mainstream financial services products, not just bank accounts, but also international markets, international trades, international transfers of funds. Bitcoin isn't designed to bypass the banks or things like that. It's simply designed to not care about them. It doesn't see borders, just like the internet doesn't see borders. It is concerned only with connecting individuals. And by connecting individuals, it empowers individuals. And I think that's a pretty exciting thing.
Indeed it is, and considering the way the central bankers operate and the amount of control that they have, do you think there is an interest to try to infiltrate Bitcoin by the powers that be, so to speak?
I'm not concerned by that. Bitcoin is a decentralized system and it can't be infiltrated because there is no center. Infiltration requires you to go to the center of something and take control of the levers of power, and Bitcoin has no levers of power. It works through a consensus algorithm that is pure mathematics that anyone can read and understand. You pull back the curtain and there's no one there. Or rather, there's everyone there. It is the sum of all of the participants, just like the internet. And I don't think really it's a matter of fighting against Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin can be used as a tool for banks. It can be used as an inexpensive payment network. And just like banks use the internet to expand their operations and their reach and to offer more services to consumers, I think eventually they'll realize they can do the same with Bitcoin and offer better, cheaper services to consumers.
It is an exciting time, and Bitcoin's obviously in the infancy, but is there any dangers of leading towards an all-out cashless society, or are there any problems with having a cashless digital currency, cashless society? Is there any issues there?
I don't think the issue is whether it's cashless or cash full. The issue is who controls the cash and who controls the information. So the issue is centralization of control. And we have never before in history had the ability to do financial transactions without a central authority that verifies or issues the currency or controls the monetary policy. Bitcoin is the first opportunity to have completely decentralized financial operations that are simply person to person. And to me, that's incredibly empowering. And we can do a lot of things with Bitcoin that can protect us from centralized control, or rather from the abuse that occurs when people who achieve control over the central levers of power then use them to enrich themselves at the expense of everybody else.
So what would be your hope to see come out of this in the coming months and in years even? Where would you like to see this go?
Well, I think one of the most exciting opportunities for me is the opportunity to impact, as I say, the other 6 billion. There's about 1 billion people in the world who not only have access to bank accounts, but have access to international markets and fund transfers. They don't have too many currency controls. They can access a very large pool of liquidity for credit. And then there's the other 6 billion who have very limited access to all of those things, live in places where there's very strict currency controls, very few opportunities to interact with the rest of the world on a financial basis, and where governments essentially operate as protection rackets and defraud and steal from their own people in order to enrich those in power. And in all of those places, Bitcoin can bring financial freedom and empowerment. I think one of the first things that we can impact in the short term is the international remittances market, where migrant workers send money home, which is a market that suffers from very high fees and very big restrictions. And Bitcoin can streamline a lot of that and really deliver their own money to some of the poorest people in the world by reducing the fees they have to pay to send money home. And that can have an immediate impact for water and sanitation and healthcare in some of the poorest communities. That's one of the things that drives me about Bitcoin.
Final thoughts, what would you suggest to the skeptics who might be concerned that it could be a potential Trojan horse to rope in all these people and to bring them under more control? What would you say to those skeptics?
I can read the source code. It's all out there in the open. If this is a Trojan horse, it's the most ill-conceived Trojan horse because it galloped out of control from the moment it was introduced, and it's now going to decentralize and empower billions of people. That was a bad move, if it was a move, but it wasn't. I mean, this is an open source project. It's a project that was developed out of 2 decades of research in digital currencies. It was the natural conclusion of all of these decades of research, and it's the natural conclusion of this trend of decentralization we've seen with the internet. And I think at the end of the day, decentralization is that theme, and that empowers people. And it removes opportunities for corruption, it removes opportunities for control, and it removes opportunities for oppression.
Well, no doubt we need to step outside of the centralized banking systems and their system of fiat currencies. So it is an exciting time. Thank you very much for talking to us about it.
So much.
And wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.